Hello and welcome to the Super Nicktendo Unscripted podcast. My name is Nick, and this is the second channel, Super Nicktendo Freemium. So if you are a subscriber of the main channel and you're seeing my face here, just make sure that if you like this content, consider subscribing, like the video, and comment down below on what topics that you want me to talk about next. This kind of podcast is just me talking about random topics that I find interesting. And so without further ado, let's kind of jump into it. I got a couple of good ones this week around here. We're going to talk about behind the scenes of my latest video. Me being mentioned on the Spawncast. Would I do YouTube full time? And then Dist Rot, the ever fabled hot topic that goes around every so often. So before we start, just kind of give a what I picked up this week in gaming. I've actually, it's pretty neat to talk about once a week, what kind of things that I pick up. So this time I got Another World for the Atari Jaguar, and this is one that I've been looking for a very long time. Another World is a pretty unique game for the time. It's kind of groundbreaking the way that the graphics looked. It's a very difficult game because it doesn't match what you were normally used to. You have to avoid certain enemies, and if an enemy gets you, you die, and then you have to restart all the way back from the beginning. So it'll take some getting used to, but it's something that I've been wanting for the Atari Jaguar for a while. And if you are a person who is aware of what the Atari Jaguar library is, you'll probably notice that Another World wasn't a it wasn't a retail release. It's a fake. This is a homebrew. It's considered one of the best homebrews for the Atari Jaguar. It's a really good port. I think it's based off of the 25th anniversary version of the game, so it's got a higher resolution than would have normally appeared on the Jaguar at the time. So the fidelity is definitely a lot better. And the problem is that this game is super hard to find. The person who made the game, they only sell it. They've made 3 print runs already, and they kind of come and go. You have to be really ready to catch it. And since it's the Atari Jaguar, barely anybody outside of the dedicated Jaguar base is aware of it. So as a result, copies of it go for a lot of money. And back a while back, I found one on eBay, and it was for it was open bids. So it's okay, I don't want to pay $500 for this game. And I'll pay at most $250. That seems like a pretty reasonable price for a game that's no longer being printed anymore. At least not now. I'm pretty sure as soon as I publish this podcast, they'll come out with another set, and I'll have wasted my money. But anyway, I open bid it, and I think I won it for $250 or $225 or something like that. And I was really excited. And the person emailed me, and they were no, I can't sell it to you at this price. No, absolutely not. And so they canceled the bidding, and I was so upset because obviously if you didn't want to sell it at below what you were asking for, then you probably shouldn't have opened up an open bid, or you should have set a reserve. It annoys me to no end when people pull that stuff. If you open bid, and that's the price that it comes at to, that's what the market decides and stuff. And if you want to sell it for more than that, then there are plenty of other auction ways to do it. So I ended up missing out on that. Could never force them to agree to it. Whenever it goes down a while back, and Songbird Productions, they sell Atari Jaguar games, and they sell Lynx games, kind of homebrew stuff. So like if you're always like looking for that kind of stuff, you should definitely check them out, because a lot of the major homebrew things, they get carried by that company. And so they were like, well, what are you guys looking for Jaguar or Atari Lynx? And I posted, I was like, man, like if you guys could like facilitate a reprint of Another World, that'd be great. Well, they ended up DMing me and they're like, hey, like we have an extra copy, like that we, it was like the person who runs the actual site. And they were like, I have an extra copy if you want it. I'll sell it to you for $250. And I was like, all right, like $250 shipped. So they were in Minnesota and I'm in Chicago, so it arrived pretty quickly. And it's in really fantastic condition. Like it's never been opened. And the cool thing too is that like a lot of these home brews, they're not sealed in any different way. So like you can kind of just like open it up and play it and then just like put it right back into the thing. So you don't even have to worry about like ruining the value by opening it. And so that's why I was really stoked about it. So I still have to play it. It is, I forgot like how, I played Another World on the Super Nintendo, and that version, like when you're playing that as a kid, like you don't know what's going on. You're like, these like little slug things that always kind of like cut you and then like kill you, and you have to start over. And I never made it past that part. So I am excited to give it a go and then maybe do a review on it. I might do a review on this channel. I've always been wanting to know what kind of certain content that I want to add in addition to this particular podcast and everything like that. So, all right, so let's get into the main topic here. We're going to talk about a couple of things. So first things first, I posted a video on my main channel. It's the GameCube Buyer's Guide. I mentioned before that I've wanted to make more evergreen content for the channel, specifically when it comes to Retronomics. The series has kind of a weird shelf life, at least for the past 3 years. Like this year, I am hoping that it's not as short of a shelf life as the past 3 years, because there's been a handful of times where a video I'll post, it's like obsolete within like 2 to 3 weeks. It was like super frustrating, because as much as I enjoy making the videos, I kind of want to flex and stretch out a little bit when it comes to the content that I produce on the channel. So I decided that it would be a good idea to make like a buyer's guide or another kind of evergreen video based on the system that I was going to do a Retronomics episode on. And once that was finished, then follow it up immediately the next week with a video about Retronomics regarding that console. So that way I could direct people that are viewing my content in the future to the most recent Retronomics episode based off of that. So fingers crossed that is the case. Like so far so good on this video's performance. It's got, as of the recording of this video on Sunday, it's got 1,200 views, which I am excited for. For a channel my size, you have to kind of like keep it in perspective, right? You kind of want to shoot for at least 10% of your current audience in terms of like how many views did you get on your video. You can't expect every video to get thousands and thousands of views. So at least within the first week. And so far, like that performance of the video, that's been since I published it on Wednesday. It's not Sunday. So I'm actually pretty happy with it. It's got a decent engagement rate and everything like that too. So I have the Retronomics video planned. I'm hoping to get it out on Wednesday or Thursday. But this video was interesting because of the GameCube Buyer's Guide, because I decided, I was like, okay, I want to get some interesting shots for the B-roll. And my wife was out of town. And so what I did was I took our second bedroom, which is currently just like a guest room, it's kind of like like a runoff room where everything just like goes there to just like store. We're planning on turning it in, converting it into like a yoga studio, or just like kind of a quiet spot for just kind of like a meditation room almost. That could also over time like turn into a bedroom if you need to, like a pull-out sofa or something like that. So anyway, cleared out that room. Like I took out the bed, I took out the rug, like I took out the bike that we have there. I have a stationary bike that we ride during the wintertime. And so I cleared out that entire room, and I put my CRT TV in there along with some GameCube stuff. And I took some photos and some video, and I think it came out pretty well. I didn't use a lot of the footage that I took of the TV in the dark because it didn't turn out 100% the way that I wanted it to. Maybe next time I'll expose for not the TV, and then put like an adjustment layer on the TV itself to bring down the brightness of the television set so that everything is still in pretty good focus. And then the other thing too is like the flicker still happens a little bit when it comes to television, especially in the dark. So that's one thing about the camera is like I really wish I could just dial it in exactly. Unfortunately the Sony cameras don't allow you to specifically dial in your shutter speed to match that, but I wasn't about to buy a Panasonic camera specifically for that reason. But I'm still really happy with the video, and I think the next video, I think I might do the Wii U next. I should have, hindsight being 2020, I should have done the Wii U first because it would have given me a little bit better runtime, because there's not that much there's not too many differences with the Wii U as there are the GameCube, but I think the GameCube right now is super popular. Like I was still pulling in like 100 extra views a day on my 4-month-old at this time Retronomics video. So I think you got to take advantage of that boost in search. So I'm excited for it. If you did watch it, like let me know what you thought of it. I don't know if I'm going to do a game buying guide every single time, or maybe I'll do a game buying guide and then down the road I'll make like another evergreen video or like a video essay about it or something like that, just to keep it fresh, and get more eyeballs on my channel. So speaking of eyeballs on the channel, the Retronomics Super Nicktendo was mentioned on the Spawncast. So if you guys are unaware, Spawncast is the weekly live podcast that's given on Spawnwave's channel, and it's hosted by Spawnwave, and then you have OJ Player Essence, Dreamcast Guy, RGT85, and then there was like another person that I'm not 100% familiar with, but they have like this weekly podcast, and sometimes they have like up to 6 people on the show and everything. And I don't necessarily like follow the podcast a lot because it's very difficult for me to follow more than 3 people on a podcast. But I was notified by a mutual follow on Twitter, and he was like, "Hey Nick, like, sorry for the late tweet or anything like that, but hey, you were called out. You were mentioned in the in the latest Spawncast episode." And he gave me a mark for it. It's 26 minutes in, and they start talking about retro video gamers causing retro prices to increase and everything. It's still like a topic that a lot of people still feel that retro YouTubers like Metal Jesus Rocks and some other people are 100% responsible for. And I've covered it on my channel, and that's what RGT mentioned. He's like, yeah, Super Nicktendo already did it, like, because Spawn Wave was like, hey, like somebody should do like an experiment where, you see if like you put like a game on a hidden gem, like and follow the price. And, RGT was like, yeah, Nick already did it. Like it's called Retronomics, and he, kind of put the kibosh on it. And they raised some interesting points about it too. I have been I have been working on another episode about like what the reason behind certain price trends we're going to do. So a lot of people have been asking me, like, oh, you should do another like specific YouTuber or something like that. Like, what if, and the prices of like videos from Scott the Woz or Woods Beat 'em Up or some other like larger YouTuber and stuff. Whenever they talk about games, you should follow it. And I've always been hesitant about that because the series, like, it really took off when I did that first Metal Jesus Rocks video. And then I did one about the angry video game nerd, and then I did another one about Metal Jesus Rocks, and applied that knowledge that I had learned before. And each time around, it's kind of gotten diminishing returns, and also it's kind of like I'm almost like repeating the same content on a video, so I haven't had really new to add. So like for me to say like, if Scott the Woz, for example, was increasing prices, it would probably work out the same as the Metal Jesus Rocks video, only with just different games. So I have an idea of like, how to approach that without making it look like I'm just trying to like ride people's coattails and go for there. So I just want to make sure that I'm doing the content in a smart, educational way that's fun and interesting, but not in a sensational way. And it's kind of a fine line to cross too, because it's like if you do it in just like a simple like Ben Stein droning like, here's how the game prices if you look at this chart and this everything, it gets boring. So I'm trying to make it interesting in that regard. But stay tuned on that. I have an idea. I just haven't really ironed out the specifics. And again, like I've mentioned a couple of times before, is like when I have an idea specifically for a video, it takes me a little bit to like work out, and I don't announce it until like I'm like ready to actually do it, because I've had people kind of like take my ideas and just like run with it and like totally take advantage of like what the search trends are and stuff, and really like grow their channel based off of my ideas. And I just, that kind of like, it really puts a sour taste in my mouth, because like some of those times, like, when you're talking to people, you think that you're colleagues and you're like level to level, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, suddenly this channel that you were communicating with and stuff, like, is now running with all this content that is kind of adjacent to you guys. Like, that's kind of interesting. I wonder how that happened. I mean, obviously, I don't own the idea of talking about retro video game prices, so before anybody gets it kind of twisted on that regard, but it is kind of frustrating to like announce like a new idea or something like that, or talk with somebody about like some ideas that you're working on in the background, and then suddenly, like, by sheer coincidence, they are using that same idea. That's kind of where I get a little bit upset about. So that's why I keep it close to my chest. So when the video is done, it's done. And when you guys see it, it'll go from that area here. So that is that. So thanks a lot, RGT85, for mentioning me on the podcast. It's always nice to get like that kind of like organic mentioning and stuff, like he it was in the context of the video. It wasn't just like, hey, you should check out Super Nickendo's video. It's, it was relevant to the conversation. And those are the shout outs that I enjoy the most. Like, it's, not gonna like blow up my channel or anything like that, but, I don't live for those types of shout outs, like I don't expect to grow my channel based off of that. So it's always nice to hear that people watch my channel and they do their best to kind of like bring it up every so often. So thanks again. Moving on to the next topic here. We got kind of a similar vein to like getting shouted out and growing my channel and everything, and it's would I do YouTube full time. YouTube, for the most part, for me, is a hobby. I do get paid by YouTube. I'm in the partnership program. I run ads on my videos. I do make money from YouTube. The issue is that I don't make a lot of money from YouTube. I think on average, I make about $50 to $60 a month on specific videos. Like looking at my AdSense account right now, I have currently $53 in there. YouTube AdSense pays out at when did they pay out? They pay out at $100. So sometimes I don't get a payment for like 3 or 4 months. So it's definitely not something that I actually rely on. Like every so often, like I'll get I'll get a notification from Google and be like, hey, you got money in your account. And I was like, oh, sweet. Like $150. All right. Like, I'll use that and buy some games or something like that. Like sometimes when it's like a bigger video, like the Atari VCS one and the limited run game one, like those I'll take the money and then put back into equipment that I was buying from that I wanted to buy for the channel. Like when the Atari VCS video like took off, I bought a wireless microphone. So I was really excited about that. But yeah, like I don't really make a lot of money on it. So when, some people go full time, it's always interesting to see like what kind of method that they're going. So one of the reasons why I bring this up is because there was this YouTube channel and it's called Gaming the Systems. And he made this video about like going full time. And he put it on his retro channel, which his retro channel had like at the time like 5,000 subscribers or something like that. And so it's kind of bizarre because you're like, man, that channel has less subscribers than me. Why are they like, how are they going full time? That's the other question too. But it was kind of interesting to see. Basically what they did is that they, the channel had grown to 16,500 subscribers, as of the recording of this video. But, it was pretty interesting though, because, he was very transparent about, what he was doing and like the methodology behind, why he was doing it. But the real thing though is that currently, like I said, I make $50 a month. I don't really have an intention of quitting my job anytime soon to do YouTube full time. And if I always thought, like from the beginning when I made this channel, I decided I was like, okay, I want to do it just as a hobby but to be creative. I don't necessarily want to go from the money making angle. I guess like the one thing that I like, it's kind of like a kill switch. Like if what would be the line where if like this channel, like the Super Nicktendo Premium channel, like if the podcast blew up, or if my Retronomics channel like blew up, like, what would it take for me to work full time on the channel? And I think like I would have to be like pulling in like $7,000 or something like that. When it comes to $7,000 a month after taxes, um, to consider even quitting. There's a lot that goes into it. I am 40, or I will be 40 in April. So to work on a YouTube channel full time, I would need to be making a decent amount of money, to be honest. And, you also have to consider that you don't have insurance. When you're a YouTuber, you have to buy your own. Luckily, I am married. So, we would go, I'd go on my wife's insurance and, go from there and stuff. And, there's other things. Like last year, I had considered doing this full time, not necessarily because I was making a lot of money, but I had like just, the past, from 2020 up until 2022, like, it just, that kind of like the stress of like not being able to go anywhere and just being cooped up and everything like that really took a toll on me. So, I had talked to my wife about, possibly, doing YouTube full time in order to just kind of like see if it would work. Like, kind of put in all of my effort, without a job and stuff and go, all in on on the YouTube channel to see if it would take off. And if not, like, just kind of like go back to work and, and just think of this as like a sabbatical or something like that. But it eventually, like, it came out where it was like it wasn't 100% in the cards for me to work with like zero income. So we kind of decided, I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna take like a week off of work or something like that and cool off and just kind of get back to it and see where it goes. And luckily I started feeling better. Work got a little bit better, and I'm glad that I didn't quit. But I've always considered what it would take to do YouTube full time, and I don't think that I could have ever done that. Like, even if the channel got to 100,000 subscribers where I was getting a decent amount of money from my videos, I still probably wouldn't work full time. I would definitely hire an editor though. That is like kind of the next like financial goal, is like if the channel starts to do well enough where I can afford to pay an editor to edit my videos, that would be the first thing that I do with the money on my channel to like increase the output of my channel without having to work as hard. Because like that's the biggest problem of like why my videos take forever to come out. Like editing this podcast, like I filmed the podcast, it takes like an hour or so to film. Then I load it into Premiere. I cut out all of the long extended pauses or like coughs or when I take a drink of water or something like that. And then I just post it. The amount of time that comes into this podcast is significantly less than, an episode that I do on the main channel. And that is like, that's on me though. Like, I know that a lot of people, say that like, oh, I spend like, months on a single video and it's like only like, 25 to 30 minutes. And people are like, you spent 4 months and on this, like, come on, man. Like, what are you doing? And that is on me. It's like, editing is such an issue for me. It's like, it's so difficult, for me to stay focused because, one, there's really no incentive for me to like put out a video on a certain specific time. Like whenever the video is gonna go, it's gonna go. And that was a thing. Like when I first started the channel, I was putting out a video. Like there was a time where I was putting out a video like twice a week. Like I was just cranking out the content, just like going and stuff, and it wasn't really growing my channel the way that I thought it was going to be. And so I would get like all really super stressed out, and there was a point where like this whole channel was like a second job that I wasn't getting paid for. So finally I kind of just like have taught myself, I'm like, listen, like it's okay if the channel never gets to 10,000 subscribers or much less 100,000 subscribers. Like if the people who find the channel enjoy the content, then that's all that really matters. Like, am I proud of the videos that I put out? Absolutely. And I'm learning in the process about, things like Retronomics. It actually helped me get a job, and specifically show like, hey, like I can be analytical and visualize data and everything. And that's definitely helped open up some doors when it comes to that. So it's not necessarily like this channel has been a complete waste of time, like, but I've started to focus on like how I can actually enjoy myself with YouTube and not feel like I'm gonna lose the house if I don't put out another video. And I think if I ever did go full time, like that stress would return. So I have like at least, I mean, I'll never say never, right? Like if the channel blows up to a point where I'm just like, getting a decent amount of money where I can like, still take vacations, not have to worry about constantly pumping out content. Like, well, I can consider it, but for now, I don't really think that I would ever go YouTube full time. But let me know if down below you are doing it, or if you would do it if you were in my position, because it'd be really interesting to know. All right, so final topic of the day, Discrot. So Discrot is a topic that I see pop up every so often, and it does come up a little bit when I am talking about collecting video games in general. And it is something that I've been wanting to talk on the channel for a bit, but I haven't really like been able to make a video that properly expresses like how I feel about the situation. So I don't think that Discrot is as big of a deal as people make it out to be. I know that's kind of a controversial take, so hear me out. I don't think that it's not that I think that it's not real. It definitely is a thing that exists. It's something that I've like run into. There are times where you have a disc that looks, in pretty decent shape that just doesn't work. However, Discrot specifically, the way that people portray it is that Discrot is something that just like eventually just like the disc just stops working. Like, and that's not how I have experienced Discrot. Discrot more than likely is caused by the storage of the media and how people treat their stuff. I really, there's never been like definitive proof that Discrot works. It's just kind of like a thing that is anecdotal for the most part. Like, you get one disc out of like 100 or something like that and it doesn't work. You're like, it's Discrot. It's like, is it Discrot, or is it because the manufacturers just suck at making like games and during that cycle? That's something that I mentioned in my GameCube video, because GameCube games, for whatever reason, like the medium that they print on and everything every so often, like Nintendo kind of like cheaped out during that edge. Like if you look at like Game Boy Color games, Nintendo 64 games, like the labels always got rubbed off really easy with like the oil on your fingers. It's a really easy thing to do. Like they didn't, increase the, like, compared to like the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Super Nintendo, like the labels are much easier to damage on those cards. And that's kind of what happened with the GameCube as well. GameCube, and there's like some Wii U games as well that have this kind of issue, and it's mainly due to like the way that they're manufactured. So like GameCube and like all other games and stuff like that, they have like this print of this foil. Like it's like I believe it's like an aluminum or something like that. It's some weird foil that stores the data onto it, and it doesn't work the same way as like a burn disc does. It's a different way, and I'll get into that in a minute. But basically, if there are manufacturing issues that cause the top stuff to flake off, then that is not necessarily disc rot. That's a manufacturing defect. Like it's kind of the same way as if you are riding down in a classic car or something like that, and the wheel falls off because it's a manufacturing defect. Like you wouldn't say that like, oh, the bolts just rusted off and like that's how it works. And like, yeah, that could particularly happen, but when something like that catastrophically happens, it's not necessarily due to just like something just being out in the open. It's not like a newspaper or a piece of art that's like stored in the sun, right? It's not like that. Like if you have a video game that's got sun damage and stuff, like that would be something that happens in an environmental way. That's not necessarily a manufacturing defect. Like that happens all the time. But when disc rot happens, like disc rot, like almost all of the time, like it only affects like a certain system. It only affects a certain medium. So like, and still yet no one has like actually come out and like done like a scientific study that says if you have your discs in a climate controlled medium, like the temperature never shifts, because that's another thing too, is like this stuff is old, and unless you owned it from the time that it was new all the way to now, there's really no way to check. Even like if you open up a brand new sealed game today, there's still a possibility that these games could have been stored in a like a storage locker or something like that wasn't climate controlled and got the heat went up to like 120 degrees or something like that, and then rapidly cooled and it heated up again. Same thing with humidity and all these other different factors that play into it. Is something that you guys should be aware of before saying that a disc just up and disappears, like just stops working. So like that's one thing that I've noticed too, is like it only affects like certain systems, like laser discs specifically. Like laser discs are very heavy, and they have to be stored a certain way. Like it says it on the thing. It says like, you got to store it in like a drying environment. They got to be stored vertically. You don't want to stack them on top of each other. And over time, that's what happens. It's like some people just don't store them correctly. Like they were stored in somebody's garage or somebody's basement. They were stacked like 15 high, and some of them just don't work anymore despite having, no scratches or anything like that. And that's not necessarily because the discs oxidized or something like that. It's just that they weren't stored properly. And that's what really boils down to. I personally I don't think it's as widespread as people make it out to be. And I think that if a disc that you have works now, that if you take care of it, it won't break in the future. And that's kind of where I'm getting at. But like as far as like buying a brand new game, like that's kind of the issue. I think like my Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes discs, like they have like this weird like bubbling on it, and a lot of people tell me that that's just like how it comes, like that was meant to be that way. But some of that stuff does flake off when you try to like, pop the disc out of the thing. So, and like a lot of people have reported issues with that specific game. So it's not necessarily like, um, that like, because if disc rot was actually common, like it would be across like every single game. Like every single game that is in a GameCube would be prone to failure, and it would be in a significant way where like somebody's entire collection would just be up and just zilched. And that's never been the case. It's usually like out of one. I think like my Super Smash Brothers Melee disc is doing something screwy. I don't know if it's my GameCube or not, because my GameCube has been dropped a handful of times. So I'm not like 100% sure of like what it was, but like when I was doing B-roll, like GameCube, my Super Smash Brothers disc had issues the most. But then again, like it was after I had run the GameCube for quite a bit before that. So is it because my GameCube kind of started to overheat and like the disk drive kind of was just like having some issues, or is it actually the disc? It is something that like I wish I could like do an experiment on, but like the evidence is so anecdotal that it's very hard to gauge what's actually real and like what's not. And that's one of the things that like it's kind of just a fruitless debate, right? Because it's like if you've experienced a broken disc that doesn't seem to have any issues at all on it, like it just plain just doesn't work. Like I specifically bought a Castlevania Symphony of the Night for PlayStation. The person said it didn't work, and they were going to sell it to me for $5, and I was like, perfect. Like this will be a video. I had planned on like making this like whole to do about it, but it never came to fruition. But that disc looks cosmetically okay. It just doesn't work. Like I popped it into 3 different PlayStations. No dice. But the other thing though is that yes, the disc looks fresh. However, like, was it resurfaced? I don't know that. That's another thing that I think a lot of people kind of just like ignore, is that there's a lot of game company, like game stores out there who they have like this huge disc resurfacing machine. I forgot exactly what the name of the stupid thing is called. It's called like it's like this huge resurfacer and stuff like that. It can like resurface like so many discs and everything like that. And like the store that I worked at, they had it. It's like a JFJ machine or something like that. I can't remember exactly what machine that we did, but like basically you put in some like polishing liquid and everything like that, and it does it in 3 phases. It like scrapes off like a thin layer of the disc, and then it polishes it, and it makes it look like perfect. And our game store, we did that on every disc that we got it. So like we would get a disc, and the way that we did it too was we would get the disc in, and we would put it into the system and test it, and then we would accept it, and then it would go into a drawer, and then it would sit there until somebody bought it. And then when the person bought it, then that's when we would resurface it. And we did that. Well, for a while, we were getting like a string of, specifically, Super Smash Brothers Melee for the GameCube. Like, we're getting tons of people, they come in, they're like, hey, like, I came home, I didn't, it doesn't work. And we're like, oh man, that's kind of weird. And then we put it in our GameCube and it would just like, it would ceased. And we're like, well, I guess it's like disk rot, like, and that's what the clerk, specific, the manager at the time, he's like, well, it's probably disk rot because like we're getting all these GameCubes and stuff like that. The games don't work. And finally, I think it clicked on them. They're like, wait, every time, like the disc worked when we got it in, it doesn't work after we sell it. What are we doing differently that? And it was like, it was the resurfacing. So what had turned out is that the resurfacer, after a while, it gets old. And sometimes it takes too much off. Like there's a certain limit on when you're resurfacing a disc, how much you can actually take off. Because it's the same thing if like when you're buffing out a car too. Like if you leave a buffer, like what you're doing is you're removing a little bit of impurities and stuff like that off of it to make like a shiny surface. You're not necessarily like, you're not filling anything in. You're just like, you're smoothing everything out. So when you have a scratch and stuff, basically what you're doing is you're taking the entire layer and you're just moving it. You're removing that to like bring it down to that scratch. So that way the surface is level again. You're not adding anything to it. So, we stopped resurfacing discs. And suddenly the problem went away. At least like for the most part, we like the amount of like return discs that we got were like essentially just inconsequential. When after we did that. And what we did too was we would tell people like if they wanted, we could like inspect the disc, if you want, and if you want, we can resurface it. However, if you resurface it, you do run the risk of it ruining it, and we won't take it back. And a lot of people were like, it looks good enough. Like when you look at a disc and stuff, like yeah, sure, like it's got like a little bit of scratches in. In most games, they run just fine. So, that's the thing. It's like, new Blu-rays and stuff, like they even have like this special coating that you don't want to run, at least like with a older disc resurfacing machine. You don't want to run those through because you'll definitely ruin them. And so like that's my opinion on disc rot in general. Like I don't dismiss the fact that like discs can break, but to suggest that like they're on like this ticking time bomb is kind of weird, because it's like, yeah, physical media doesn't last forever, but again, like that's more of a reason why you should be making backups of your games. I know Adam Carolla, he's really anal about like how he does backups, and like what he does is pretty interesting because he'll stick it into his CD-ROM drive. And what's cool about when you rip a game to your computer is that it checks all the sectors of the data to make sure that it's valid. And if it's a bad disk, then it won't run. So it's like a really good way to like go through all of it, because like even when you're playing a game, if you play through like the first like 15 to 20 minutes, even an hour into it, like there's a handful of issues where you probably will never encounter a disk read error. But down the line, like if you're playing like for 5 or 6 hours or something like that, and the laser gets on that little itty bitty spot, and like that data is corrupted, it could like throw off the whole thing. So that's like another good thing that's a good practice that you should be doing. Like you don't necessarily have to back it up, but like you can also just kind of just like run it through that program to just see if the disc is good. And I hope like more GameStops or game stores like, adopt that practice. Like they'll probably go a long way to figure it out. But that's the data. That's, like that's unfortunately like the thing about crowdsourcing data is that you get a lot of a lot of anecdotal instances, and a lot of the times, like, the person who tells you that issue can't really explain like how, like, other points of data. It's like only that it failed. Okay, well, why did it fail? Did it fail because you found it in a dumpster? Did you find it in a thrift store? Where it's possible. Like I said, like, a lot of the biggest problems of like media damage is the constant like reheating and cooling of the media. Like, if you were to leave a Nintendo cartridge in your car at like throughout the day, like today in Chicago here, it's like been 50 degrees, and it could probably get up to like, maybe, depending on where the sun is and stuff like that, it could probably get into the car about like 80 degrees maybe. So if you left it in there and it was baking in the sun, like direct sunlight, and then overnight it like got down to like 20 or something like that, like the cooling and the heating and stuff like could possibly damage it. Okay, so here it is. That's gonna do it for this episode. But let me know what you guys think of that specific topic. Have you experienced disc rot? Let me know, because I definitely I kind of want to explore it further. Like I said before, it's not like I'm saying that it never happens, like it's not real or anything like that, but I just don't think that it's as widespread as I think. And I really do think it has more to do with how the discs are handled rather than the discs like just being exposed to air and going from there. But that is my podcast. Just make sure that you are subscribed to this particular channel. We got 69 subscribers so far. Nice. And the channel is doing pretty good. But let me know what kind of topics you're going to talk about next. Next week, I'm going to talk about the PlayStation VR 2. I got that coming in the mail on Wednesday. I'm really excited for it. And I got a little bit of discussions about that. So it'll be pretty interesting to discuss with you all next week. I am going to do like a main essay video, but I also am going to like include it as kind of like a topic for this podcast as well. So make sure that you are in tune for that. So thanks so much for watching. You can follow me on Twitter for now, at least until the platform just falls apart. At Nicktendo, that is my handle. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.